Morning all and welcome to this week's Jump Recruitment discussion. This week we're looking at the Great Resignation. Today we'll be discussing how to sort of keep your recruitment talent on board when opportunity knocks. And from what I'm hearing, it's not just knocking on every recruitment's door, it's knocking on everybody's door. So let's have a quick look at what that actually means. 1 in 4 UK workers are planning a job change. However, if we start to look at that worldwide, in America, a worker quitting their job hit records high in November with 4.5 million people walking off the job, according to the Bureau of Labour in November. Randstad in the UK did a survey of 6,000 workers, and they found that 69% felt confident to move to a new role in the next few months. And that survey was done in late November 2021. The job-to-job movers totaled 979,000 between July and September 2021, and that came from the Office of National Statistics, but also from the Office of National Statistics in September, said as furlough ended, it showed only a slight increase in redundancies. Instead, many people choose to leave their jobs, and resignations in that month was up by 60%. The number of vacancies we know at the moment are a record high. It's 1.1 million and it's increasing, but early figures show that 1.2 million vacancies, according to the ONS. Mr. Wilson at the ONS said, "We've never seen job filling like it at a faster rate. There are 750,000 people starting a new job every month since COVID restrictions were eased." So this year, there's been 750,000 people every single month finding a new job. So the comment is, if you think there's a candidate shortage, well, I don't think there is a candidate shortage. It's the fact that, as we said last week, we're a little bit obscure as agencies to the candidate market. 1/3 of millennials said they will look for a new job if the employer says they have to return full-time to the office because they want to stay working from home. And Stephen Rafferty from Ring Central, big company in the UK and Ireland, said, "This is the thing, you can't just throw money at it. So you can't just say, here's a load more shares, here's a load more money, etc. That's not why people are leaving. They're leaving for a different lifestyle." So I have one question for you all to ponder before we kick off this week. Is this the Great Resignation, or is it the Great Reshuffle? Because what I'm hearing is there are a huge amount of people moving within the companies as companies start to change their working processes and are starting to look to accommodate new people and new processes such as working from home and mental health to ensure that they attract and retain staff working from there. So this week, I'm joined by Paul Jacobs. He's no longer in Euston Station. He's actually back at home, which is good. Dave has survived his trip up north and is back now down in sunny Chelmsford from there. Heather is on a trip to Leeds, so I hope she'll keep her feet dry in Leeds because it's been flooded quite badly up here just at the moment. So let's kick off this week and see where we are. So the first question that I've got to ask is, obviously we go around lots of clients at the moment, we're speaking to lots of people. So have you seen the Great Resignation in your clients, or have you seen a culling of heads from them being behavioural misfits?
Oh, that's a very good question. Now, I have a bit of a sort of beef about this Great Resignation, actually, if I could just state this up front. It isn't that I'm unaware of the fact that people are chopping and changing jobs in great numbers. I think it's very clear that is happening. Nearly 1.2 million vacancies in the country, and our clients are reporting enormous numbers of vacancies, most of which are due to attrition. So we know that this is happening. But I think my beef with this is very much this. I think that what happened was a backlog of people over an 18-month, 2-year period who had pre-pandemic been thinking about leaving, but then didn't leave their jobs during the pandemic for the obvious reasons, then decided when the coast was clear en masse that they would change jobs. And I think that there was this big flurry, to use your word earlier, of people moving towards the exits. I think we'll see that coming down. I think that was just a blip based upon the fact that people were in freeze mode for a period of 18 months. So I think we saw that, and I think it will dissipate a little now. I don't think it will carry on at that rate. That's my opinion about it. Have you seen the Great Resignation in your clients? Your question, Howard. I think the answer is Yes, I think we've definitely seen in many of our clients a number of people leaving and moving on. This is not a surprise, really. As I've already just said, it's very likely that some of those people may have moved on in the previous 18 months to 2 years anyway, but then decided, as with the client's behavior, that they would do that once they felt more secure. So that doesn't come as a surprise. Again, I don't like the phrase great resignation, but I think we have seen it in some of our clients, people moving on. Some of those people were people that my clients were not necessarily upset about losing, if I can be discreet, and some of them they were disappointed to lose. Interestingly, quite a few of those people have gone to internal recruitment jobs, which is in itself quite an interesting point, um, because I would assume that people that want to do internal recruitment for a specific company only are not necessarily in love with the recruitment industry, which I think, and I'm sure everybody listening would agree, offers a great deal more variety. So I have seen it. Culling, sort of behavioural misfits. Not, I haven't seen an awful lot of that. I haven't seen much of that. I'd like to think that's because those situations are managed effectively, regardless of the economy.
Dave?
Yeah, I mean, among the clients I'm working with, I haven't seen a mass resignation. I haven't seen that many people leave. What I have noticed is an age thing in the few people that have left. More people under 30 have left the recruitment companies that I'm associated with, not only the ones that I work with, but others as well. Anecdotally, it's people under 30 who have been affected by COVID. No question, have been affected. They've missed the camaraderie of working in the office, or they've just decided, you know what, I want to do something else. Recruitment isn't for me, or I can earn some different money, or the company I'm working for has lost its sense of purpose. A whole host of reasons why. But anecdotally, from what I've seen, those that are slightly older and more mature in years, they're stuck with it. Because whilst none of us have ever seen what we've been through in the last couple of years, we've been through financial crashes, we've been through major changes, and you just kind of ride it and you learn how to ride it. But younger people haven't had that experience. And also, they're very confident about getting work. There is no shortage of work. And if you're reasonably good in recruitment, you can be reasonably good at other things. So direct answer, not really. I haven't seen that much change. But the market is so buoyant out there that we'll come on to it later. But if we're not looking after them, there's plenty of opportunity for them to go.
Actually, Dave, just an interesting point, and it's not often I disagree with you, as you know, since we support the same football team and we've got to stick together, us Gooners. But the truth is that I've actually seen people in certain companies I'm working with of a 40-plus age group leaving.
Okay, that's interesting.
And making reference to my earlier point about the internal recruitment roles have tended to be the people who have been around a while. So it may also be the case that people have had a couple of years to think about, well, do I want to carry on with the sort of pressure of recruitment? Do I want a quieter life now? And so forth. But the point we'll get to about work-life balance is an important factor.
Yeah.
I think from my point of view, I've not seen what we class as the Great Resignation. What I've seen is a massive demand to put a bum on a seat in some of our agencies. And what I've seen is those people churn and burn reasonably quickly because they're not either right for the job or they're not the right cultural fit for the business. So I've seen a bit more of that cultural culling rather than the Great Resignation of people being brought in and then being moved on reasonably quickly because they can't do the job. And so it's interesting though, when you start to look at some of the stats, if that's right, 750,000 people since the turn of the year getting a new job every month, it sort of says there's a lot of people are resigning and moving on from outside of the recruitment industry, where the recruitment industry seems to be fairly static for a change, which is quite good news to hear. So it means that our retention methodologies that we've been putting into place over the last 2 years to retain our staff are starting to have some really good effect. What we're not seeing though, or what I haven't been seeing, is a really stringent recruitment process to get the right people into the business and then retain them through the first 12 months to make more money from the second month. The question that sort of came to bear when we're starting to look at the stats that's coming through is a lot of people are talking about the cost of living, and the rise in the cost of living. And a lot of people are talking about that there is a huge demand for employers to increase salaries.
Yep.
And one of the questions that we start to sort of throw at companies when we start to look at what they're doing is, should you increase your salary as an incentive to attract people, but also to retain people? So if we had someone of note that we wanted to retain, would we increase the salary in order to retain them?
So great question. And look, I mean, inflation, as everybody's aware, is running at around, well, I think 7%. I've just been and filled up my car with petrol, and I mean, it's, you don't need me to tell you how expensive it's getting. So there is pressure, no question, from every employee, regardless of whether that's in the recruitment sector or our clients, for more money to cover the cost of inflation. I've been hearing quite a few stories about conversations with staff around this point. So my point about salary is this: it's a war you cannot win. I mean, firstly, I think your salaries have to be at the right level. Clearly, if you're underpaying people, you're behind the curve, you're going to have a problem. Every recruitment business that we work with, and virtually every recruitment company in the UK, one way or another, are looking for additional staff. I mean, I don't know of a recruitment company that isn't on the lookout to bring in new people. So our people working for us are definitely at risk, all of them from our perspective. We have to make sure that their salaries are there or thereabouts, so they're on the curve. Being ahead of the curve is another matter altogether. But it's a war you cannot win. No matter what you pay your people, somebody somewhere is going to offer them more money. You up your salaries, you get above the median level, and again, somebody will offer more. There is a point at which you have to say, this is the right rate for the role. So I think it's firstly making sure your right rate is in place. You definitely don't want to be underpaying. That's very dangerous. But trying to be the best payer is in itself a bit of futile task, I think. I think we'll talk about this in a moment, but I do think that it's other things aside from salary that you really have to look at. Certainly, as I said, make sure the salary is the correct level, but I think you've got to be looking from a holistic perspective about what it is and what the reasons why people should stay in your business, some of which is connected to income. Some of the things are connected to winning hearts and minds, and we ought to investigate that as we go through this discussion. But definitely keeping salaries at the right level is important, obviously.
Yeah, I think Paul's hit the nail on the head. I think you've got to pay appropriately for a market which is moving up. If you're not paying your people the right salary, they are going to be enticed by any number of offers. I'm not sure I 100% believe all those surveys where people say they don't move for money, because the conversations I've had for many years with clients is they've said that they want this, and this, but bottom line is they're being paid 5k more on the basic or 8k more on the basic, and that's why they've gone. I think we've got to look at, for the word salary, I think we've got to look at the word compensation.
Yeah.
Because for our salespeople, we want them to be earning really good commission because we want them to be performing well. And if they've got a good commission scheme and they're earning well, the salary just becomes part of that. If they're not performing very well, and in this market, if they're not performing very well, I'm going to suggest they're not as good as you need them to be. But if they're not performing very well, then the focus becomes more on salary because that's what they're trying to live off, rather than commission.
Great point.
So we want our people to be earning a good salary and an appropriate commission based on what we get as a return from the clients, which is on a separate point, not for today, why we're trying to encourage all of our clients to put their prices up. Because what we've got is a product that is in scarce demand and we should be charging more for it because our staff are demanding more as well. So I think salary is important. And if you are able to go to your people to offer them a little bit more without them asking, and we've had that with a number of our clients, I think that stands you in great stead. Even if it's only a small amount, it stands you in great stead. Because out there, as we all know, there are plenty of people that will offer ridiculous money. I know of one company in London that is offering a base salary beginning with a 3 for someone with less than 6 months experience. Ludicrous, and they hope that it works. If it does, then that's great, and if it doesn't, they can afford for it not to work. But I think an appropriate salary with a good compensation scheme, good performance and good management, then our people should stay.
So I'm going to throw a little curveball in here, just see what people think. So I remember and I'm sure Paul Jacobs probably remembers this revolutionary comment that came from the head of Adecco, not the head of the UK, but the head of the worldwide Adecco, when he sent over the head of HR to have a chat with the UK directors on a thought of, if we're offering an OTE of £100,000, why aren't we paying our people £100,000? Is it the fact that we don't trust them to bill enough money to earn that type of money? So what he was saying is, should we be paying them their OTE and then only pay commission once they've achieved their annual target and then pay commission on that? Is it because we don't trust them to actually bill that amount of money that we're expecting to bill? And that sort of throws back on that comment about salary and why salary is important. I'm sure as we get older, what we see is people want a higher salary and less commission because it's about, moving house, etc., etc., etc. When you're younger, it's about earn as much as you can, and therefore you've got that incentive to earn your commission and work from there. And so it was just a really sort of interesting concept. Would you pay, if you thought your OT is 60k and you wanted someone to bill 200k, would you pay them 60k flat out? Or would you say, no, it's 30k's worth of commission and off we go?
I wouldn't pay that. And Adecco turnover in 1 month more than most of our clients turnover in a year. It's a different conversation for the massive companies. And I've worked for one, we three have all worked for them. It's a different conversation. Most of the clients that I'm working with have between 5 and 60 staff. And they want to incentivize their people to overperform, to have great relationships with their clients, to build a really good candidate pool, and are very happy to reward them with that and to reward overperformance. And also there is a penalization, obviously, if you don't perform as well as you need to and the company needs you to, you don't earn as much money. So personally, given the type of community of the people that I serve and work with, I wouldn't want to take that risk. And it's not about whether I believe that they can do the job or not. It's about being able to look at, being able to look ahead and say, well, how much money is coming in? How much can I afford? What does it affect on my cash flow? If I paid everybody their on-target earnings at the very beginning, I'm not sure they'd have the incentive to overperform.
I mean, just to agree with you, Dave, I think the question is, what are we doing here in terms of income, salary? So what is the job worth? So a recruitment consultant, okay? So the basic salary is what you're paying for that individual to perform that job. Call it 25, 30, whatever it is you're paying. That's the salary. That's what we believe that role is worth. That job is not worth as a basic salary 60, 80, 100,000. The job that they're performing daily is worth whatever the basic salary is worth. I said earlier, you've got to make sure you're at the right level. The rest of it is what we would term bonus. Bonus by definition means it's extra money based upon performance. And I think to guarantee somebody, as you've just said, 60, 80, 100,000 without any guarantee in return that you're going to get back the revenue that would dictate that level of monthly income is incredibly risky.
Which I understand. So before we go further, what we've got to remember is that this conversation is about keeping people within the business. So this is not Andy
Burns. Well, you keep everybody at 100,000, wouldn't you?
Well,
but you may not want to.
let me finish, Paul. So Andy Boyd's got a right comment on there, but it's about you burn cash in the early stages. But if you're talking about people who are already in your business and they're billing really well within your business, if you said your OTE is 60k, would you pay them 60k and said we expect you to build 200k? If you get to 200k, we will give you more on top, because you're looking to retain these people in the business. Remember, this is retaining people, not enticing people into the business. And so it's a bigger question than sort of just what are there. And I threw the 100k out because that was the OT that they were throwing around at the time. If you start to think about 60k, 50k, OTEs, etc., for someone who's been in your business a couple of years, would you then price them outside the marketplace where you could retain them and then billing 150, 200K constantly? And so there isn't that churn and burn type of scenario. And it's just sort of a thought process that people to have in their head, because the question then sort of leads into, what do you believe then are the true hooks that keep people within your business for the long term? And remember, this is keeping people within the business. This isn't attracting people.
So, I mean, I think this question goes deeper than what you pay people. I think this is about people buying into the culture and the goals and the behaviors and the values, the vision of the business and the leaders of the business. It's also, I think, about really expressing to individuals, not just where the future of the business is going, what you want to achieve for the company, but that old adage, what's in it for them. And I don't think that's purely money. I think that's a lot to do with their career progression, their development as professionals, as human beings. I think if you're trying to hook people in for the long term, you've got to create very clear career paths that are obviously linked to the development of the business, and people need to understand what they look like, the pathways, where they're going, what they have to do to achieve those things. Again, it's all got to be aligned with the company's goals and aspirations. But I also think it is about expressing gratitude to people, making sure that they feel part of your family unit. That isn't just about income. It's very much about getting people into an organization and making them feel, as you do as a leader and a manager, passionately about what we're trying to achieve, what you're trying to achieve, the differentials in your business versus your competitors. It's taking a pride in what you do. But of course, it's also to do with your overall income. So we said earlier, it's not just basic salary and it's not just bonus. It's also the other things that wrap around that. And we've talked a lot, for example, in the past about holidays. We know that holidays, for example, are one of the big incentives. I've got several clients who have revised upwards their holiday entitlements recently. We've talked about some other incentives, which I'm sure we're going to get to shortly, that we hope will hook people in. But I think this is something that's very important above all else, and this is kind of hinted at in what I've already said. I do think it's about very effective internal communication. You can't imagine or hope that people understand where the company is going. You've got to be talking about it on a daily basis, like a mantra. I was talking to a client yesterday about a 3-month sprint mantra that's working very well. And everybody in the business is galvanized to try to achieve this particular goal. We talked about, well, if it works in 1 3-month period, we should really have another 3-month mantra for the next quarter, and so on and so forth. Yeah. The method here is very simple. You get people to buy in to what we're trying to achieve. You make them understand what's in it for them at the same time. And you keep on repeating it daily, multiple times, to make sure that we're all in the right direction. And of course, it's down to effective management, monitoring, caring for people, supporting people, coaching and training people, which I haven't said, but I think learning and development is also a very important ingredient for keeping people in the business. It's not just about, here's a promotional opportunity, off you trot. It's about preparing people for that opportunity and then supporting them when they're in it, and then preparing them for the next step, and so on and so on.
Dave?
Yeah, for me, it's all about leadership. It's all about, if I'm working in a company, do I believe in the people that run this company? Do I believe in their purpose? Do I share in their vision? And can I see that the work that I do makes a difference here on this sales floor, in this office, in this geography, whatever it is? And I think if the leaders of the business know the answer to that for each of their staff, whether they have 5 or 50, if they know the answer to that, then they can work with those people to make sure that they're brought in and that they're being developed and that they're staying. And if the staff don't like it, they don't believe in the vision, they don't like the leaders, then they may stay while they're earning good money, but they'll always be looking. And that's, for me, is the reason why people come to work. And I think, again, the last few years have showed us some companies have brilliantly managed their staff who have been working from home. And because we are now living in a kind of working from home, working from the office type environment anyway, it's marvelous what some companies have done. They've really done a great job, and that's really got buy-in. And if you've got buy-in from your staff, then you'll keep them. If you haven't, then you haven't.
I think it's easy, isn't it, when you start to think about it? I remember when I first started in recruitment, the only sort of catch was, that you had the Tony Byrne 30 Steps Recruitment video playing every lunchtime. That was the catch for that. That was your professional development. But I think what we're talking about now is building a more creative and a better type of environment where people feel that they have the autonomy to say what they think without the retribution. And I think it's about being treated like an adult and generally being treated like an adult. I think sometimes we treat people too much as an asset and we don't actually understand how to get the best out of that asset because we don't treat them like an adult. And so it's linking that behavior and values that you want from your people to the behavior and values of the business. And it's those things that will then start to attract people and retain people longer within your business. And I think that also goes with, what you guys have talked about there, your career, a step-by-step guide of how you're going to achieve your goals, what they're going to be doing on those goals, but also from a recruitment business, being more creative in the service offerings that you've got. If you start to create better service offerings, differentiate yourself within the marketplace, etc., then people will stay longer within your business. But I think it boils down to me is actually treating the person rather than an asset, but as an adult, and understanding that if you want to get more out of that asset, then you have to treat them more as a human being.
Correct.
Rather than just a number on the end of a spreadsheet. And I think that's the real important thing.
Absolutely.
H, maybe we've got a new title: an adult, not an asset. That we can build a whole thing around that.
A whole training program on adults versus assets. What we've got to think about, though, we've talked an awful lot about putting the right commission plans and the right incentives to drive behaviours in. But why did most companies not see that there is a direct link between behaviours and, their performance? Why is performance always based around their targets, and therefore commission is always based around their target and their target performance, not based around their value performance and the value that they put into their business? So why don't companies see it in that fashion? Why is, it's always the biggest biller gets promoted into the job up, whether they're right for the job or not? Why don't we see behaviored values as the right thing?
That's a great question. Look, I mean, historically, we've only rewarded people in our industry for income generation. And yet, the modern attitude, correctly, is that as business leaders, when we are trying to attract and certainly retain people, and when we look at the way we're viewed by our candidates and our clients, we're aware now that we ought to be far more involved in DE&I, charities, sustainability, and so forth. All the things that I think we all agree are incredibly important. But if you really believe in those concepts, if it's not just a question of placing them as a footnote on your website, if you truly believe in those areas, it's something that drives the behaviors and values in your business, then you could argue very strongly that your incentive program to some degree should be geared towards people participating in those situations or being engaged or measured against things like assisting charities and so forth. At the moment, if we're most recruitment businesses, it's pretty mono. We pay purely on the amount of money that people generate, fee generation. That's it. Now, it's not, I think, that simple any longer. I think we do need to step back and review the way we reward people if we truly believe in those values and behaviors that we are promoting as parcel of what we're about. And the modern recruitment companies, I'm talking to a young guy at the moment who's in the throes of setting up a new recruitment business. And it's fascinating because he's linking what he's doing to the whole area of DE&I and sustainability and so forth. And we've had very detailed conversations about how people will be remunerated in line with maintaining those core values, because he believes in them to the core of his soul. So I think it's something to think very hard about. But we do know, don't we, that commissions, incentives drive behavior. And so therefore, if we know that and we want to see our stuff exhibiting certain behaviors and values, then yes, we do need to think about how we're going to incentivize them, remunerate them to see those behaviors appearing in the business, both internally and externally.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I was with a client, a couple of people running a really good business, and they said, the thing is, Dave, I think I believe in all this D&I stuff and all of this new modern things, but I can't work out whether I'm going to make money from it. And if I don't make money from it, I'm not going to be able to hire people, and I'm not going to be able to keep them employed. But I know it's important. So I said, well, what are you going to do about that then? And they said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, why don't you get all of your staff together and have a conversation with them all? Be honest and say, I'm not sure what is the right response. I'm struggling with it as a business leader. Let's have a conversation and let's see what 7 of your other staff all have to say. And they had a morning and they discussed it. And just the very fact that there were 9 of them in a room trying to work out what was the right approach, what was the best approach for their business, it was that act that brought them all closer together. And they came out with some good answers. They came out with some things that they couldn't do. But the fact was, it was the collective and doing something together. And the other 7 felt valued because they felt their input was recognized. And they all, there were a lot of different ideas. They couldn't implement them all. And there were some things said that maybe wouldn't have been said if you'd asked them to fill out a form, but they were honest, there was transparency, and the leaders really displayed openness. They listened, and I thought that was a really good thing. So I think all of these things, a modern recruitment company is going to have that open, transparent situation with their staff. So, and I think that will help retain people.
So what we're saying then, we're going back to that word autonomy, aren't we? Giving people autonomy, giving their opportunity to actually say their piece. But what we were saying there with what Andy Boyd's brought up there is it's not just about the revenue generation that these people can get involved in. It's about empowering them to be part of the business growth and giving ideas. And it's really interesting sometimes when I sit in a business and you listen to the consultants, and sometimes I just sit in clients' offices and you can hear what the consultants are saying. And they're complaining about certain things or looking at certain things that need changing. And yet the managers are completely deaf to that conversation. And yet they're thinking, well, we can't change it. Why not? Well, we've always done it that way. Well, we've always done it that way doesn't really help. And I think that, to incentivize people just on commission, if I could incentivize people on bringing ideas that give me more time to actually then go and do more recruitment, then I'd pay for those type of ideas. That makes them feel empowered to do those type of things. And if you go back to sort of things like, I remember reading the story about the shampoo experts, and they were all talking about how we generate more revenue at Palmolive. And one of their little guys who had nothing to do with the business really turned around and said, I've got a simple idea. People are very stupid, he said. People will follow what they do, you say. So why don't we just put on the bottle? If we want to double our profit, we need to sell more product, twice as much product. But do we have to? If we just put rinse and repeat on the back of our bottles, how many people will do that? And they suddenly found that everyone was suddenly washing their hair and rinsing and repeating. But when we think about that logically, how daft must we be if we think, I've washed my hair once and it hasn't actually cleaned, the product hasn't cleaned it, I've got to use it twice, you'd look to buy a better product. But that was a simple conversation from a member of their staff, and they made an absolute millions and billions of pounds out of that simple comment. And I think we've got to think about, to incentivize our staff properly, we've got to look at the behaviors that we want from our staff, and then how we engage those behaviors in the business. And if we engage them in the right way, the business will become faster, quicker, and more profitable, and the retention of those people will be longer, and therefore they'll stay there.
I have to say, H, I never thought I'd hear the day that we 3 used a shampoo analogy.
Well, I was thinking the same thing. Three bald blokes, and we're talking about shampoo. Honestly.
It was either that or use the golden lay analogy, and I couldn't find one. One of the big things that we talk about, though, when we talk to management, is about recognition, and just how powerful proper recognition is for your staff to help create more input and more effort. So let's talk about recognition and how, if we looked at recognition, how that would create a reason for people to stay.
Well, I mean, firstly, by the way, I love this A.A. Milne quote you've got on the screen at the moment, just as a side point. It's a lovely quote. Can I just say, I think that this point is vital. Recognition is vital, and it's the easiest thing in the world for us to give. I know it's a cliche, but to say well done to people, congratulations, I think you're wonderful, you did a brilliant job, takes a matter of seconds, but can last in somebody's mind for the rest of their lives. It's maybe, arguably, the most valuable tool we have as leaders, the way in which we support and express our people, express our gratitude. And I learned this back in the day when I was running Office Angels, that I would send out a weekly newsletter, and in that weekly newsletter I name checked people in my business. I had 650 staff, and I was name checking certain individuals on this newsletter that went out. And what was fascinating about it was very occasionally I got a call from an area manager or one of my colleagues to say, you forgot to mention Dave Pye. Dave had a brilliant week and somehow you managed to forget him. And I'd feel terrible. So I'd send out another note saying, oh, I'm ever so sorry, Dave did a brilliant job. It meant so much to people to be mentioned. And when I went around the offices around the country, went into the kitchens, there they were printed up on the notice boards, highlighter pen on their names. Now, it's a simple point, but saying well done to people, showing gratitude for work that they do that you might consider to be over and above what they should do, or simply just looking for the opportunities to say well done, is so important. One of the things that I think we can often be accused of in our industry is that we're very quick, sometimes not to our credit, to point fingers at people, find fault, be critical when performance isn't great. We're quick to do that. But I also think that we should be quicker to point fingers when people have done a great job. And it's getting people on board through that recognition, through that warmth, that empathy, that makes such a difference. H, you were talking about assets earlier, adults being assets. Couldn't agree more with you. It's a simple point, but if you bring in great people and you nurture them, you look after them, and you express your gratitude, and I'm not talking about finance here, I'm talking about the human touch. If you express your gratitude and you keep people, guess what? You have a wonderful business. You have a wonderful business. It's all about people. So I don't think this is a small point. I think this is a very, very, very big point. And I think it leaks, as it were, into every element of the culture of great businesses. They're very quick to congratulate people and look after people and express their gratitude.
It's interesting, Paul, you use the word highlighter, because we used to have what we called Stabilo moments, because the Stabilo pens
yes.
were the highlighter pens. Yes. Other brands, of course, are available. But we used to have Stabilo moments. And I learned from my boss, I ran a division and he was the COO of the business. And he would ask, how many Stabilo moments have you had today? And we would start meetings off with that. And he would challenge his leadership team to say, who have you encouraged? Who have you thanked? Who have you told has done a really good job? And it's something that comes natural to some people, less so to others, and it's a skill to work on for people. But certainly I would encourage for our audience, most of our audience know all of their staff really well.
Yes.
Because they're not running businesses with 300, 400, 500 people. So if you know them well, you can congratulate them on things that they're doing well. And by the way, it doesn't just have to be about what they've done at work. It could be about something they're involved in out of work. You can give some support to something they're doing out of work. But anything like that sort of recognition, I think it helps build familiarity, it builds a comfort, it builds that sense of purpose, and people want to work with people that they like, that they believe in. And it's quite a simple thing to do.
So I'm going to challenge a slight bit on that there, Dave, that when you said, business owners know the people who are working with them. And yes, they do. But the question is, do they really know those people? And one of the things that I found very early in sort of my management sort of career, and it was same sort of Paul, you're sort of going around sort of lots of different offices, etc. I worked out that if you wanted to get people on side, you had to understand what motivates the people. So I'd be the same thing. I'm going to an office, I'd email the office manager or the people, the sales managers, etc. Tell me everything that people have done. So it's some things that everything that people had done. So I could go in and then say, Dave, you've done this, well done, etc. What I started to work out that some people feared that conversation, some people absolutely relish that conversation, because some people were extrovert and some people were introvert. And what I worked out suddenly, that if I was walking into an office and I knew that was 2 or 3 introvert people there, if I was going up by train, I'd have probably emailed those people beforehand, Dave, well done. I've just, coming up seeing to these, I just want to have a conversation about this, but I just like to say well done now before I walk into the office, because that'd be more powerful to them than me walking in and going, Dave, well done, and you're hiding in the corner going, oh my God, don't highlight me. I don't want to be highlighted. So I think it's knowing your people and knowing what truly motivates them. And we always talk about money is the biggest motivator in the business, but I think recognition for what they've done is a far more powerful motivator if you work out what they're going to do with that money. And that goes to your second point about, congratulating for things that they've done outside of work is really important, because that says that you've got that more rounded understanding of the person. And so recognition comes in many different ways, where it's a pat on the back, a whisper in the ear, a little email, shout it out across the office, email across the whole company, etc. All of those things are all about highlighting your staff, and you as a manager being the person in the background, and you're basically thanking your staff for what they've done. And I think that goes an awful long way. So as we're coming towards the end, I've got one more question to ask, because I'm going to skip a question that I'm going to throw into next week's. Okay. And this is going to be a really difficult question to answer in 4 minutes, Mr. Jacobs. Okay. So I'm just going to say this now.
I have no idea what the insinuation
What does it mean? What's he saying?
There is no insinuation. Okay. I put a quote up here. Now, this quote sort of has stuck with me for an awful long years. You've changed me forever, and I'll never forget you. The reason I put that quote up was to go with this question. They say people don't leave companies, they leave managers. So that quote is a really powerful quote, irrespective of how you read it, depending on what you're leaving and the circumstances you're leaving. So how do we stop people leaving managers?
How do we stop people leaving managers? Great question. And it's true. People, join a business, they join the glossy brochure. We do a great job selling the business to people, and then they join the company. This is that whole EVP thing that we always talk about. And down the line, they leave very often, not always, of course, because a lot of our business have outstanding leaders and managers. So let's be very clear about that. But sometimes we see some consistent trends coming through when we analyze the attrition rate, and we discover that a certain person or certain people seem to lose staff on a more regular basis than others. And it's a fact that very often, and I think we've all had experiences of leaving managers in the past. It's the case that we're quite happy with the business, but the person we have to speak to and report to on a daily basis is not aligned with our behaviors and values. We have limited respect for them. We simply don't like them, and they will drive you out of a business. I think as a leader of a business, getting close, earlier point you've made, being close to people is extremely important. And I believe that it's not just a question of being close to the line managers, to your leaders, to your managers. It's also getting close to the people that work for those individuals. Now, some of that, I think, comes through having pretty disciplined methods of appraisals and performance reviews, and making those, I think, 360-degree or 180-degree reviews, so that you are not only appraising your member of staff, they are in turn appraising you. But I think you make it your business as a leader and a manager to get around the business and get close to everybody that you can get to really identify where the strengths of the business are and where you have very strong leaders, but also extremely importantly, to understand where you have weak managers. And where that becomes apparent, you cannot sweep it under the carpet. You can't think you'll get to it at some point down the line. I often talk to people about what makes great leaders. One of the points I have on one of the slides is dealing with confrontation. Nobody likes confrontation. It's not something most of us particularly want in our lives, but avoiding difficult conversations, difficult situations isn't going to make the situation go away. In fact, it generally makes it worse. So getting closer to managers, leaders, getting closer to your people and understanding where your weak links are is important, and then trying to work through and improve those links, firstly trying desperately to get those managers to perform at a better level, is vitally important. But where you cannot achieve that, you have to make some difficult decisions, because you cannot have a leaky bucket. You have to have a consistent method of management throughout the business. Those managers of yours are the standard bearers for the business, and they have to uphold the values and the behaviors that you give out as an organization. And if that's happening, that's great. And if it isn't, we need to deal with it. So this point is very, very valid, and it's extremely important. We cannot allow people to leave us because the boss they had is consistently performing poorly when it comes to leadership skills.
Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of tie it up for me with one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite authors, the American author Maya Angelou, who famously said, "People won't always remember what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel." And people do leave managers, there's no question about that. Bad managers in good companies are dangerous to your success in scaling your business. So, and they don't have to be managers. It could be leaders, there could be team leaders, there could just be colleagues sitting next to you. So it's about making people feel in the way that they deserve to be felt, and to treat them with the right element of respect.
Yeah. And
if you get that right, and that's a challenge, isn't it? But if you get that right, then people will stay.
I think I'm going to throw one sort of simple or two-part points. We've covered one point already about why do we constantly just promote the people who will build the most money, rather than looking at the behaviors and skills and what makes a good manager and what makes a good biller, etc., because the two don't correlate sometimes. So there's that side to address first. And the second side is we do not do enough training with our management teams. And it's interesting that I've been doing probably 3 sessions every month with 3 different companies over the last, 4 or 5 companies actually, over the last 3 or 4 months, of people who've been in management and been in management for 4 or 5 years, but never had been any training on how to manage their staff and how to develop their staff. And I think what we've suddenly found is that they've suddenly changed things all of a sudden, that you can see the knock-on effect within the business, because we haven't trained the managers. As soon as you start to train the managers to actually understand that it's an adult and an asset, not just one, and if you treat it properly, it will come back and treat you properly, then you get a far different view. So I think we've got to start to look at that and start to say that, yes, if people are leaving your manager, yes, you're right, Paul, we might have to make a decision, but also we might have to train that person because maybe they just don't know. Exactly. And it's the training and developing of the managers that we probably are the poorest at. And I always say that first management position where you're a billing manager is the hardest position in recruitment. And yet we still don't train that person to actually do what's right. And that's train the people. And therefore we can get more out of the people.
And just a quick last point, that Howard, just on that, when people leave and have left because they've been, for whatever reason, mistreated by a manager, when you get to speak to the other members of staff, they will tell you what's been going on. My point here is that we find out afterwards. We have to be proactive. We have to make sure that we're close enough to people in our business to avoid those situations occurring. We don't want that happening. We want to make sure, to your point, that people are well trained and supported and feel that they have the opportunity to have a transparent environment where they can openly speak about their thoughts, and we create those methods for them to be able to do that.
So what we're saying is then that we're not seeing that great resignation in recruitment. What we're seeing is a reshuffling of people to a certain degree and a culling of the people who aren't behaviour aligned. But what we're also not seeing then is, are we training and developing the people in the right way to help retain? Are we incentivizing them the right way? And this goes to the question that we skipped, and which I'm going to push into next week. So next week, we're going to talk about to target or not to target. We're going to talk about KPIs and how to develop KPIs and how to run people from KPIs. We're going to talk about how we're going to develop our staff to ensure that we get them to a position where they are going to stay for a long term, not just that cyclical staff that we have at the moment. So next week's is going to be a really interesting one, because it's a question that we get a lot at the moment. How do I KPI? What do I KPI people on, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a big sort of drive at the moment in certain sales organizations on the comment is, do we target or not to target? And I think it's a great opportunity to challenge both those theories and see what we can come out at the end with. So, ladies and gents, thanks so much for your time. Dave and Paul, thank you for your time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I hope the weather improves this week and it's not as blustery as it was last weekend. So I'll leave it there. Guys, thank you very much, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good week, everyone.
Take care.